last two chapters is the Yatra. It's called the Yatra, the Nepal chapter and the Tibet chapter. So this is I go on a journey because I have my dad's asti with me, the ashes. So one fine day I say, yeah, I have to let go. There comes a time when you have to let go. So this is the time I'll go to Manasa Sarovara and I'll let go of this in the holy waters. So I just read from the Tibet chapter, just one paragraph. The walk from Yamadwar to Dirapuk is about 13 kilometers. It takes 7 or 8 hours through a high altitude desert. On either side, the mountains stretch wide and bare. Prayer flags dance in the wind. Money stones etched with mantras line the paths, forming low sacred walls. I walked in silence, overtaken by sun and dust. Tibetans passed me, performing full body prostrations. They repeated it again and again, stretching for miles. The strength of their devotion and dedication was unwavering. I was moved and just couldn't fathom that kind of faith. A group of bonds passed in the opposite direction, walking the Kora anti-clockwise. Actually, the Kora, it's they circumambulate Manas Sarovar. The Tibetans call it Kora. Because from Manasa, we can drive to Darchen, the starting point of Kora, around Kailash. A group of bonds passed in the opposite direction, walking the Kora anti-clockwise. Many smiled and greeted me with folded hands and the warm touchy the leg. May you be happy. This probably was one of the kindest blessings I have ever received. Just as the sky cleared, I saw a monastery on a hill to my left. It might have been the place where the yogi Milarepa once meditated. I was exhausted and unsure how far I had left to go. And then I saw it, Mount Kailash. Black, sheer, colossal, streaked with snow, glowing under the sun rays. The north face shimmered like gold. I stood transfixed, unable to react. Then slowly I dropped to my knees. Had no words, just tears. In that moment, everything fell away. My doubts, trepidation, exhaustion. I saw myself as this insignificant minuscule in front of the mighty mountain, a complete nothing, a complete nothing. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that reading. Before we begin the conversation, I just want to say I thoroughly enjoyed reading this book. It's an easy and delightful read, about 170 pages, and it's yet packed with such rich information that it almost feels like a travel guidebook, a cultural map, and a memoir all in one. The pictures also, which are included in the end, add so much charm and authenticity. They make the journey feel personal and vivid. With that, we'd like to dive into some questions. I have a few questions. I want to know, in your book, which is filled with such detail of cultural observations and anecdotes, how did you manage to collect all this information across countries? Was it through journaling, conversations, or just living the experience?
I would say it was living the experience because I don't maintain a diary, and wherever I go, I just take a notepad and just make a note of something I find interesting. I make a note of it, and that was before the pre-mobile era. But once I got the mobile, yeah, you have the mobile and then you just click pictures but I have this. I love to visit museums. Wherever I go, the first thing is I go visit a museum, and then you get authentic information from museums. And I buy the museum book, and I love to go to the museums and see what I can find. You need a keen observation when you go to the museum. You need some patience and the Islamic Art Museum in KL. I recently had visited, and there was this section called caping. There was beetle leaf shaped metal. It was made of metal. It was shaped like a beetle leaf. And then they said it's called Arai Mudi or Aruna Mudi, and it came from Tamil Nadu, and the Kelantan royal family used it as a covering for the children's modesty. They used to use that. So I don't know if we'll find that in Indian museums here, but I found it there. And then the very next exhibit, I found a pair of padukas. It was mentioned padukas, what are the saints and rishis use, made of ivory. So you don't know how long it's going to be there, but then I quickly clicked the picture. I would have included it here, but there were a lot of I had limitations on the picture, so I couldn't include. So talking of museums, there was this in 2018 I visited Srinagar, and like my driver was like, cab driver said, "Madam, kaha le jana hai? Pehle kaha jayenge?" I said, "Srinagar Museum," and he had a hearty laugh. He said, "नहीं सभी लोग Dal Lake देखने जाते हैं. We want to go to the museum." So I said, "हाँ जाएंगे, Dal Lake भी जाएंगे, but let's go to the museum." I was really impressed with the kind of statues, dating back to 280, much before that. They were from Afghanistan, and this lot of Buddha statues of Buddha and Shiva, Vishnu. It's amazing, amazing. So I just have the pictures, and maybe in the future I have that whatever museums I have visited. Maybe all the pictures I can collate and bring it out in the form of a book. So museums have been my authentic source of information. And then talking to people. Like if I go to a market, if there is no language barrier, I just start a conversation and speak with the people there and get to know. So that has helped writing this book.
So your book also has a very striking cover. Could you tell us the story behind this design and what inspired the choice of the colors and the imagery?
Yeah, colors was basically like colors, red, green, and everything in between. So initially, my the title I planned was China, India, and everything in between, like the two civilization, and then this the Southeast Asian countries. So then I said, no, it will be I don't know whether it will be proper to mention the countries, and the Southeast Asian countries may not like being called. We are in between. We are unique in our own way. Why these two giants? They basically historically these have been two giants, and they may not like that. So then I said, okay, let me stick to the colors. So red representing the China, green the Malaysia, and all the other rest of the colors India. So the book was like, this is the lion dance, the mask, they wear, and lion dancers during Chinese New Year, they go from house, so they are invited basically, the houses and shops and establishments invite them, and they are supposed to bring in good luck. And then they give them fruits and monetary, that and money and gifts. And similarly, we have tiger dances. Like in Karnataka, we call it Hulivesha, like in South Canada, where we basically come from, we call it Pilivesha. During the Janmashtami, they go from house to house, similarly. So I found a striking resemblance between the two customs. So they go dance, and it's they drive the evil away. They're supposed to drive evil away. So I found the traditions very similar. And then this is the tiffin carrier. It's there in all the Asian households. So they carry a lot of memories. And there in Malaysia we have the painted ones. They call it timber. And all the sweets, and during festivals, they all the sweets are stored in it, and then they are gifted. And even when the girls get married, it's given as a gift. So the slightly expensive ones made of copper, brass, or ceramic. And then we have the Diwali lamps, the oil lamps, and the Malays also have. They keep it in hollow bamboo, the oil lamps for Ramadan. So they also have a similar tradition. And then, as I already mentioned, this is the shadow puppetry, the Wayang Kulit. It's called the Wayang Kulit, made of leather, and the stories of mostly Ramayana. So there are characters like the Rama, Sita, Hanuman, Ravana, and then they have folk tales too. But it is, you can see in any museum you go, you can see this picture. And then we have the mountain, Kailash. So it's a sacred mountain for the Jains, Buddhists, monks, Tibetans, Hindus, and for me it was, uh, I had to immerse my dad's ashes, so that I had a purpose. But then after visiting Manasa Sarovar, I could have returned back. I was like exhausted and lot of, I said, but after having gone there, something pushes you. Say, oh, you've come this far, you can go a little further. So I don't think it was fate or whatever. I don't know what it was, but it pushed me to going there, and it was really blissful.